So our discussion points for today is there would be like an introduction about visual regression testing and some basics about automation, continuous integration, and continuous delivery. And what is visual regression? Tools involved with visual regression, limitations of visual regression, and we'll be focusing how to use backstop JS for visual regression testing, and have a sample code or sample setup on how to like automatically deploy or do the test. And we'll do a recap and a couple of Q&A sessions if time permits. So if you're going to be asking, why do we want to automate? So because we just want to really avoid doing those boring repetitive tasks. If you do have like a task that you seem to always do or repeat every time, much better if you could be able to script it or like avoid it by doing a script to do it automatically for you. And it will also help us deploy like faster code, and we'll have like faster code iterations with your team. And it will also help us if you have like automated testing in place. It will help us in early bug detection instead of seeing those flaws of your code in the live site. You will be able to detect it from the test itself before deploying it to your live site. And have you been on a situation that you are trying to fix a bug, and then after fixing that bug, you were able, or another bug would come out, or another two more bugs comes out, and then after you fix those two bugs, there's like another set of bug, and then the old bug comes back again. So if you will be having like an automated test in place, you will be able to spend less time chasing those bugs, and you will be able to detect those bugs before you deploy them to live. So this is what developers want. We could be able to free up development time, so we could be able to slack more or focus more on how to improve the product rather than chasing those bugs. And of course, if we have this automated process in place, it could also save money because it will save up a lot of developer time going back in those bugs. So I remember those days when we were on the Cowboy coding era. Things get complicated when new developers comes in. We try to onboard them. There's no version control. There's no QA testing. We directly edit the sites in live. So we have like this common issue that we always step on each other's work because of the FTP overrides. So there's no staging, and there's a lot of like we do a lot of manual QA. So modern tooling can help out those issues that we have on those days. Since we have like version control, we could easily know who has the issues or who committed that code that has issues on how, and we could also easily find which code caused the issue before it is deployed to live. Continuous integration and continuous delivery could be able to help us with these pain points, as it will like give us more overview on the whole code itself. So what are the boring tasks that we want to automate? So usually if we do use coding standards, we could automate the coding standards check or code sniffs. So we won't need to manually check each line of code. The code checks will let us know which line did not pass the coding standards. Also minification and asset compilation, we could be able to like automate it rather than like manually doing every time you deploy your site, as well as image optimization. Rather than doing it manually every time, you could automate that task. Um, as well as like rather than emailing your boss, I've done this bug 001. I've already finished this. You could automate the process to like notify your boss or your team that this bug has been fixed. Behavior-driven testing like BHAT, you could also automate it uh, or script it, and as well as cross-browsing testing. Instead of like having a team to test each browsers, you could use an API from cross-browsing testing platform to automate that process. And page speed with Google, I forgot the name, but there's already an API for page speed. You can be able to automate. So you know that every time that you push your code to live, the page speed is not affected. Or if there is like a payload that you accidentally committed on your site that causes the site to go slow, you will be able to detect it beforehand before it goes to production. As well as SEO scores, marketers need this metrics before being or make sure that their current content on the live site SEO is not affected. There are services that offers the API to check those scores before or like automatically get those scores from each of your page, and as well as unit testing. Make sure that your like the intended output is tested, and it would not cause any unintended uh, output in your live site. Load testing, you could also automate or put a load test on your site automatically before putting it to production. And this the most like boring task that usually is being done, that is updating the CMS, especially if, not sure with Drupal, but if you're using WordPress, sometimes it's it eats up a lot of time when you try to update, and there's some bugs introduced after those updates. And last but not the least is visual regression test. We could also automate and script this. So for terminologies, what is CI and CD? So continuous integration is defined as a process where different developers and the automated tasks can work in parallel. So you have like a group of like team of people that works together. You could be able to work on each task or a bug without affecting on the others' work. Let's say you have like developer one working on bug one, and then developer two working on bug two, and you have a QA. Every time that you push or do a fix, you will not be interfering with the work of the developer one or developer two, and then as well your QA as well could be able to check those changes in parallel with your works. And what is continuous delivery? It refers to the task that passed from CI. So from the previous, from your continuous integration while your team is working, when it passes everything, your like those tasks that passed will be delivered to your production without like any downtime. So it's like a cycle that you could be able to make sure that all of your code goes into your production without like interfering the live side. So for CI/CD, what are the choices? So there are two main choices that you could have: software as a service CI/CD and do-it-yourself CI/CD. So for DIY or do it yourself CI/CD, you could use the most popular one, Jenkins. If you do have a lot of time to set that up, that's most popular one. Also the AWS code pipeline, use control, file builder, CP, and many more. But if you do wanna have you don't have any time to set those up, there's a lot of services out there that offers CI/CD, software as a service, like Circle CI, Cabs CI, GitLab runners, Bucket pipelines, version control. Almost all the version control providers like GitHub, Bitbucket, and GitLab already provides their own CI/CD. So after you push your code to your version control, you can be able to trigger those automated tasks. So, and many more. And GitHub is one that we'll be using for this example that I'll be showing later. And there's like a new terminology that they're trying to promote right now, the WebOps Culture. Basically, it's like a DevOps for website. It empowers like web teams to develop, test, and release website changes faster. Basically, it's like a set of tools that is provided for specially geared for web developers to deploy their code in teams faster. So, what is regression? By definition of lexico.com, it's like a return to a former state or less developed state. Yeah. So when this visual regression happens, usually, usually it happens on PHP version updates. If sometimes it introduces an error on the top of your site, or sometimes it alters the view of your site. Most of the time, it also happens on CMS core updates, as well as plugin or module updates. And if you have like theme modifications or theme updates on your site, that usually happens. So for visual regression, there are also two main choices. There's also a software as a service visual regression tools, and there's also a do-it-yourself visual regression tools. So for SaaS, there's what they call Percy, Chromatic, AppTools, Diffy, Staging Pilot, and many more. So those are sites that offer some API, so you can be able to like get into visual regression immediately, so you don't with minimal setup. So Staging Pilot was acquired by Pantheon like last year. So for Staging Pilot, that's their UI. They have like a web tool where you put your URL to test against the changes that you have, and there's like a scrubber for it for you to check which change, if there is a change. So for visual regression testing, do-it-yourself choices. If you want to like set up your own visual regression testing, there are options like RAPE, which is developed by BBC News, Gemini testing. There's also WebDriver, and one that is the latest one, backstopjs. And this will be utilizing backstopjs for my example code later. So what are the common features of visual regression tools? So the most common features that they have is you have a reference URL and you have a test URL for you to be able to compare. Usually the reference URL is your live site, and test URL is where you have pushed your changes to, or which URL you want to test with versus your live site. And you could also set multiple breakpoints. Let's say you want to test against mobile, which is like, let's say 380 by 520. If you want to test with desktop, 1280 by 1200. You could be able to like set multiple points in your setup. And and error reports, where you could be able to get the results in terms of percentage, if how many percentage have varied after you had a change. Some also have APIs, so if you want to put it in a continuous integration environment, you could be able to get those data as an API, so you could be able to parse those results. And common limitations for visual regression tools is sometimes it's having difficulties in detecting dynamic contents like social feeds, um, image sliders, because it's like moving parts. Sometimes it won't synchronize on the part that you're trying to test with. So sometimes it's like it will give you like a false positive. For social feeds, especially, it's like it changes most of the time or dynamically. So it could also give you a false positive, as well as background animations. If you have like a background animation, sometimes it will also give you a false positive, especially if the background animation did not load when your visual regression tool tried to screen capture that part, and it's not synchronized on the live side. So it can also introduce a false positive. And random sources like ads, like Google Ads, sometimes it will give you, for each page load that you do, it will give you a different ad. So it will also give you a false positive if it doesn't match from your live in your development environment. News feeds, like, yeah, sometimes the news feeds are different every time that you load your site. And as well as reaction after an action, like if you're trying to test what what are the changes for, like, when you try to hover on a button, or you like what does it look like if that URL or a link is visited, as well as drop downs and like on type interaction, and form submissions. So why why are we using, or why is the backstopjs like a good choice if you're going to be using it for visual regression testing? So first of all, it's open source, and compared to the other choices that I've showed earlier, the backstopjs is being actively developed. Some of the choices that I showed earlier is not being actively developed at the moment. You can see there's like 5,000 stars and for like 400 forks, and there's a lot of contributors. So this one is a pretty active project. So it's a good choice for us to use this as a tool. And good thing about the backstop.js is you could be able to test for different screen sizes. You have like references for the usual um, the usual features that you have for visual regression tools, the reference and a test. And the one that you're gonna love is the visual diff inspector, the cool scrubber thing that they call it, where you could be able to see what change using a scrubber. So let me get a sample of that one. So All right, so here's a sample of the um, test result or the visual where you can be able to see the changes. So let's say you try to do the test. When you do this, when you click on a scrubber, you'll be able to see which one changed. On this one, there's nothing changed. So let's there. You can be able to see which one has changed. So on the GUI, there's also a report, what they call browser reports, where you can be able to see the difference between test and live in terms of percentage. And you could also see how much it changed in like X and Y in terms of pixels. So for example, so for the sample, what I have is a change from a mobile phone view or viewport. This is the reference or your live site, and then this is your test site. So it varied like slightly, and yeah, you can be able to see there. And in terms of difference, you can be able to see the difference in percentage, and it moves like 2 pixels on the y-axis. So for the desktop, it moved on like y-axis 3 pixels, 4% difference. So if you're gonna be using this for CI and CD, the one that you want is the JSON or XML report, where you can be able to parse the data in terms of a file, where you could be able to get the percentage if it passes or not. So another good feature that JS offering is it could be able to deal with the dynamic contents, the limitations that I mentioned earlier. Let's say you have like a slider or um, an ads that changes every time the page loads. You could be able to hide or remove those selectors. So you could be able to remove that to the test. So we will not be able to like or exclude that for testing. So we won't get false positives. And for advanced scenarios, like you could also simulate clicks and hovers, and also ready events and delay loading. If you do have like an application that has like a loader and you want to wait for it to finish or load everything first before you start the test to be able to put it on the settings. So for setting up backstopjs, the basic requirement is you're gonna need Node, and to install it, you're gonna use npm install /d backstopjs, and to initialize the backstop, you're gonna use backstop init, and then you can edit the backstop.json file. So for the backstop.json file, the one that you need or the minimal changes that you want is putting in an ID and then setting up your viewport or which um, viewport you want to test. Let's say for phone, for with a height and width, and the scenarios. And you're gonna also need to put like a label for the URL that you want to test. So to initialize the testing, you're gonna need to do the backstop reference command, and to do the actual test, you do the backstop test command. So when it's in execution, you're gonna see reports like this, and your output will be located in backstop underscore data HTML report. So for XML reports, you're gonna be getting something like this, as well as in JSON, where you could be able to parse those results that you need. So let's go to the sample code that I have. So to set this up, I slightly modified this one. So the configuration is in a config file where I put in the reference URL and then testing it against the QA URL. So I'll be testing the home page and the blog page and the shop page. And then for the scenarios, I had the viewports for the phone and the tablet, and I defined what's the width and the height of the viewport that I'm testing. So I have a recording on or when I ran the script. So we'll try to simulate a theme change on a site. I'll try to change the menu font size, so we could be able to easily like check how Backstop will be able to detect that change versus live site and on the dev site. So from there, I changed the font size, and then I committed it. And then pushing it to the Git repo. And from the repo, from you'll see that yeah, I pushed the change, and then under the actions tab, you're gonna be able to see the build process, and we could be able to check how the script is being run. So from the actions tab of GitHub, you'll be able to see that it's now running. It's trying to compile the site. And it depends. It takes a while sometimes. And I think the whole process for my setup will take around like 3 to 5 minutes for every push. So as you can see, it's trying to pull out the composer dependencies for your site. And then it will also the script also includes how to like set up terminus and build tools for your site to be able to for your continuous integration to be able to communicate to Pantheon. It will set up the SSH and then the terminus tools. So SSH is needed so you can be able to push your code to Pantheon, as well as terminus, as that's the way how we like, communicate to the server if you're going to be using terminus. So it depends on your server which one you'll use. So on our case, we'll be utilizing Pantheon for this example. So you can see it's building the WordPress site. Actually, it will also, it can be, the concept is the same, even if I'm talking with WordPress. concept will be the same. You'll just like replace this with Drupal, and then you could use the same tools. So there you go. Backstop is now trying to compare the changes for the test and the live site. All right. So it finishes. So you're gonna get a message that it was successful. So from here, um, since we have like three tests for tablet, for desktop, and for mobile, and you could be able to see which changed using the scrubber. So you could also set in your script if you have like a certain threshold, let's say 5%. If it goes 5%, you could automatically deploy it to live. If yeah, it depends on the script that you will be putting. Which one is surpassing and which one is failing. So yeah. All right. I guess let's see. So for the sample build that I made, I copied it from the Terminus Build Tools plugin that we have. So there's a lot of ways to do it. So on the example that I did earlier, I've used the Composer to build the WordPress site, and then used um, GitHub Actions to act as the CI to build all those assets and dependencies. And then I deployed those changes to Pantheon and compared dev versus live using backstopjs. So yeah, I'll just skip this part. This for WordPress. And for the backstop configuration, those are the values that you're gonna be needing. The reference site URL, which is your which site you'll be pushing your changes. So in my case, I pushed it into QA1, and you're gonna need to also put your secrets or hidden variables, so you could be able to deploy it to Pantheon, like the site UUID and the email that you use in Pantheon, and the SSH keys. So those are the things that you need. Pantheon site name, reference site URL, Pantheon environment, and the Pantheon environment. So for the secret tokens, that's the email, the site UUID, and your SSH key or staging private key, and then your machine token in Pantheon. So, all right. So to recap, we have shown the automation CI/CD basics. We have explained what's the basics about visual regression and the features of backstop.js compared to the other available tools out there, as well as the limitations and the sample code to like demonstrate the process. So these are my references when I made this presentation. So thank you very much. And I hope I shared new stuffs with you today. So I'm open for questions. Hmm. So we have a question from Martin. So can backstopjs emulate real mobile device or just the viewport? Um, I haven't tried on a real mobile device, so yeah, I can't really tell. So it can be like as you can set, you can only choose like the height and the width. So I'm not sure if it will really emulate the real device. So thanks for the question. Yeah, I guess it's just a viewport. So any more questions? Makita ang sarili ko eh. Saan ba ako?
The hairdo. Okay.
Backstop.
Okay. Any more questions about visual regression in general, or
Oh, can see Jonathan. Hi, Jonathan.
mhm, okay? Any other questions? Okay, looks like the presentation was so good. We don't have questions. Last time. No questions. Everything was understood, and probably folks are trying it now.
Angry.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, thank you very much, Carl,
Thank you very
for
much.
that presentation. And so we are now going for a break. Um, we can now go for lunch, or well, if it's too early, you can just stay in the room to discuss with the other folks. Um, we will resume by 1 p.m. Okay. So we will use the same room. Um, I will I will close down the room a little bit later after we end this presentation. I'm gonna stop